tanks, but they didn't make very many of them. We made mediocre tanks, but we made thousands of them. So just by numbers alone, we won.
And that was all in Japan or in Europe too?
In Europe, and that's another thing. We are the only country that fought on two fronts and won. We fought against the Germans in North Africa, and in Italy, and in Germany, and France, and we fought against the Japanese in the Pacific, and we beat both of them without too much help from our allies.
What was the thing you were telling me about Jimmy Doolittle? What did he do?
He was in charge. All right, it was his idea. All right, the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. We were pissed off. We got to do something about it. So Jimmy Doolittle was a colonel in the Army, and he was a pilot in the Army. And his favorite aircraft was a B-25, a twin-engine medium bomber. Okay? And he brought to the chief of staff, he said, you know what, I think we can take a B-25 and put it on an aircraft carrier, which it was not designed to do, and we can take off, and we can fly to Japan and drop bombs on Japan.
So wait a minute, is that the first time that airplanes were brought in on boats?
No, we had carrier aircraft, but they were all single engine. Okay?
Right.
This is a twin engine bomber. Oh. Now, the ship that was the ship that was selected to do this was the USS Hornet. It was I forget what class. I think it was an Exus class carrier.
What does that mean?
Okay. It was one of our larger carriers. And so they figured it out. They could put 16 of these twin-engine bombers on the deck of the Hornet. And the only way they could get them on the deck was put them on there with a crane. They did it, I think they did it in Norfolk, West Virginia. They put them on in the Atlantic, and then it went through the Panama Canal to go into the Pacific.
Jeez.
I'm not sure. They might have put them on the West Coast. Anyway, they had to put them on with a hoist because they couldn't land on it. There was not enough room. And in the meantime, after they said, okay, let's do this, then Doolittle found a field in Florida that was kind of out of the way and not very many people lived around it. And he had his bomber crews go to that field, and they laid out the distance of the flight deck of the Hornet.
Right.
And they took turns practicing on taking off in that short distance. Now, don't forget, this is a two-engine plane. At that time, it was the biggest aircraft that was ever on an aircraft carrier. Okay? And like I said, there was only room for 16 of them, and they couldn't put them on the flight deck down below. They had to go on the actual top, the actual landing area of the flight of the aircraft carrier. So that means that the first ones that took off had the shortest runway. And as it got back to the 16th airplane, then he had almost a full deck to go off of.
Oh.
So you got to picture that in your mind.
So wait a minute, but what if they had to have a crane put the airplanes on the aircraft carrier, then what were they going to do after they did their mission?
Let me finish.
Okay.
It was it was a one-way trip, Heidi.
Oh, shit.
They were supposed to get within 450 miles of the coast of Japan, take off, do their bombs, and then fly on to China. And then they were going to either crash in China and parachute, or find a friendly airport, which was England in China, okay? However, the best laid plans of mice and men. On the way there, a Japanese picket boat spotted them, and they were like 600 miles away. So they shot the boat, but they weren't sure whether or not they got it in time before it sent any messages. And they were in a place where they shouldn't have been. So it was Doolittle's decision to go ahead, to either scrub the mission or go ahead. And he said, "Let's go." So what they did was they took all of the B-25 carried a 30 caliber machine gun in the nose, 250s on a turret above it, and 250s in the tail. They took the 250s above and the 250s in the tail and replaced them with broomsticks to gain to take the weight out of the airplane. And then they put extra 5-gallon cans of gasoline in the airplane. And then they also had it was a special tank above the bomb bay of gasoline, plus the gasoline that was in the wings. So they knew they could get to Japan, and they thought they could get to China. So that's what they did. So they went and flew these things. Now, when they flew into Japan, they flew unopposed. Nobody knew. They all thought they were Japanese airplanes flying in, until, of course, the bombs started dropping. But they didn't have any opposition. So they just kept going. And drop your bombs and keep going and go to China. Well, a lot of them didn't make it. They made it to the coast of China, but not too far inland, and because they ran out of gas. So they either crash landed, or like I said before, they parachuted in. Most of them parachuted in and were picked up by friendly Chinese troops. A lot of them, though, didn't do that, didn't make it. Some of them got captured and were summarily executed. The Japanese were not. Well, they did not adhere to the Geneva Convention. They were not part of that Geneva Convention, even though the Germans were, but they did things just as bad as the Japanese did. So that's the Doolittle raid. That's what happened. And
That's
after
cool.
that, Jimmy Doolittle was promoted to Lieutenant General and given the Medal of Honor.
And what was the movie that you said?
30 Seconds Over Tokyo.
Huh. Who was in it?
Spencer Tracy played Jimmy Stewart, and Van Johnson, I forget who he played, but his airplane was the Ruptured Duck, and that's the plane that I'm going to build.
Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah, you'll have to send me pictures of the plane that you're building.
Well, it'll take a while. I haven't planned it. It's not one I'm going to be building anytime real soon.